Hello, and welcome to another Angry unit of the week. And today we're taking a look at the T-5 Pantera. So the Germans weren't the only ones who had the luxury of using Beuter equipment in the second World War. It was quite an intense affair, especially Eastern Front, so any sort of advantage or equipment would go quite nicely. And so the Soviets did manage to capture quite a few Panther tanks in relatively good running condition. Now you would think on the surface level, Soviet tank crews would love the Panther tank. It's bigger armor, it's got a big gun, all the top trump stats of it are pretty damn good. But you see, wars aren't run purely on weapon statistics. The Soviets, as you might imagine, in 1944 were doing a lot of advancing, and the Panther, especially on the move, had a lot of logistical issues. They didn't have a lot of spare parts for the Panthers because they didn't produce them. They had to capture the spare parts. Same thing with spare ammunition. You'd have to replace the transmission final drive more often compared to a T-34. Yes, in combat, the Panther was a pretty damn good tank, but the problem was getting it to combat to begin with. They had only really used roughly a dozen or so captured Panthers throughout the entirety of the war, in a more of a hasty ad hoc manner. In-game, the T-5 Pantera is a 140-point medium tank, available exclusively to the 10th Guards Division. It has two weapons. The weapon loadout is what you'd expect from a Panther. The long 75mm gun with 50 AP rounds and 30 high explosive rounds, dropping 185mm penetration, 8 damage, 40% accuracy, 2km range, and a rate of fire of 6 rounds a minute. The high explosive is pretty much similar as well. Not as big because it's only a 75mm gun, but it's still enough to make an infantryman put their head down. It's a very, very powerful gun. You can knock out the majority of tanks in game with it alone, and you have enough ammunition to do that. You also have two machine guns. Their machine gun. Pop down to the miscellaneous set. It has 130mm of frontal armor, strong top armor, 60mm at side, 45mm at the back. It goes 41km off-road, 55km on the road, has medium stealth, and very low optics. So, in battle, this is literally just the Soviet Panther tank. There's really nothing all that fancy about it. We all know the Panther is an incredibly deadly tank in SC2, albeit it is rather costly, but especially considering this is a Soviet tank, which are going to be using to fight the Germans the majority of the time, it performs actually even better, because especially with a lot of the German mid-range tanks like Panzer IVs aren't that well armored compared to some of the more mid-range Soviet tanks, so you have an even better time of penetrating through that German steel with your German gun. Of course, the main problem with heavy tanks such as this is, especially in 1v1s, the price and limited usage, because you can really only use tanks like these effectively in more open areas. And in 1v1 maps, depending on the map you're playing on, that can be a bit more limited. Of course, in team games, more heavier tanks are better because you have less frontage, and just being able to slug it out at long range is pretty damn useful when you have a 75mm gun with 2km range and 130mm of frontal armor. This is definitely a very worthwhile unit to take in 10th Guards Tank Corps. The division is another issue entirely, as you do have a whole heap of tank slots, so slapping in, well, the Panther card is not going to be all that much of a detriment. And it's also the heaviest tank you can get, well, most expensive. You do also get access to the Tiger, but in my opinion, the Panther is a little bit more and useful. Also, it has a pretty generous availability. Considering you can only get them in A phase, you can get 2 of him in a card, which is not bad at all. Overall, it's a Soviet Panther tank. It does exactly what you expect a Panther tank does, which is win the majority of tank duels against the majority of armored vehicles in the game. However, it's still a heavy tank, so 1 or 2 criticals can really limit its effectiveness quite quickly, or, cluster bombs from the top. And well, I'm gonna leave it off at that. This has been another Angry Unit of the Week. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and as usual, please just take it easy.